In the heart of Lagos, where wealth towers in glass mansions and the poor vanish into shadows, a stranger stumbled upon a dying dog beneath a bridge. What seemed like an act of kindness soon spiraled into a storm of secrets, secrets powerful enough to shake the empire of one of Nigeria's richest men. Tonight, you will witness a story of betrayal, love, and unimaginable danger. A poor man, a wounded dog, and the hidden crime of a billionaire. What would you do if one choice, one moment of compassion, pulled you into a world where the truth could cost your life? Lagos never truly sleeps. Its streets hum with restless energy long after the markets have closed, the symphony of honking danfos and distant generators weaving through the night air. Yet under the colossal span of the Third Mainland Bridge, the city felt like another world entirely, one forgotten, one swallowed by shadows. Here, amidst discarded nylon bags, half-burnt fires, and sleeping strangers sprawled on carton beds, Obinna lay awake, staring into the darkness. Hunger gnawed at his stomach, and the chill of the concrete seeped into his bones. Then a sound sliced through the stillness, a faint, almost imperceptible whimper. At first, Obinna thought it was his imagination. He rubbed his ears, trying to shake off fatigue. But there it was again, a trembling, wounded cry, low and haunting, carried by the wind like a plea for mercy. He rose slowly, his body heavy from exhaustion. His bare feet touched the damp ground as he followed the sound, weaving past sleeping bodies and piles of refuse. The whimper grew louder, more desperate, until he spotted movement near an abandoned sack. There, curled in a pitiful heap, was a dog, its fur matted, ribs sharp against its skin, and one leg bent at an awkward angle. But this was no ordinary stray. Even through the dirt and blood, there was something regal about it. Its eyes, though clouded with pain, held an unusual brightness, and around its neck was a collar unlike anything Obinna had ever seen, a leather strap studded with rare gemstones, glinting faintly under the dim streetlight. His heart skipped. This was not the collar of a common house pet. He crouched slowly, extending his hand. The dog flinched, growling weakly, but Obinna whispered softly in Igbo, his voice tender, as though speaking to a child. "Easy, Nwan. I won't hurt you." With trembling fingers, he touched the collar and felt the engravings. "CA." The letters gleamed against his rough, calloused thumb, their mystery pressing heavily into his mind. Obinna's heart raced. He had lived in Lagos long enough to know what such wealth symbolized. Whoever owned this dog was not ordinary, and for reasons beyond understanding, the animal had ended up broken and abandoned beneath the bridge where only the poorest survived. A flood of memory surged within him. Once, back in Owerri, Obinna had dreamed of becoming a veterinarian. He had loved animals as a child, sneaking. Scraps of food to goats and chickens his family raised. But dreams collapsed when his father died suddenly, leaving him with siblings to feed and debts to repay. The university brochure he once cherished lay forgotten in a drawer, replaced by the harsh reality of survival. Now he washed buses, carried loads in Balogan Market, and slept under bridges. Life had drained hope from him. Yet here, before him, was a reminder of that lost dream, a wounded animal asking for care. The night pressed heavy, the wind hissing like a warning. Obinna glanced around uneasily. He could not shake the feeling that unseen eyes lingered in the shadows. Still, something stronger than fear held him there. Despite the weight of his own suffering, despite his hunger, he could not abandon the creature. With gentle resolve, he lifted the dog into his arms. Its body was frail, trembling against his chest, but its eyes softened as if surrendering to his touch. Obinna returned to his small corner under the bridge, ignoring the curious stares of other squatters. "See this foolish man?" one muttered, laughing. "He cannot feed himself, but he carries dog like baby." Another chuckled. "Maybe he thinks the dog will bring him riches. Idiot." Obinna ignored them, tearing the last piece of bread he had saved from earlier. He dipped it into a sachet of water and pressed it gently to the dog's mouth. Slowly, painfully, the dog licked, swallowing as though each bite was a battle against death. Tears stung Obinna's eyes. He whispered softly, "You will not die tonight, not while I still breathe." Under the bridge, amidst mocking laughter and the bitter smell of poverty, a quiet bond was sealed. Two broken beings, one man forgotten by society, one dog discarded by the powerful, found comfort in each other. Above them, the Lagos night glittered with distant lights of high-rise towers on Victoria Island, a stark reminder of the wealth and power just out of reach. But for Obinna, nothing else mattered. In that moment, with the trembling animal pressed against him, he felt a spark of forgotten purpose. The air grew colder, and silence returned, too still, too unnatural. Then, without warning, headlights cut through the darkness. A black luxury SUV rolled slowly along the road above the bridge. Its tinted windows reflected the faint glow of streetlights, hiding the eyes that surely lurked inside. Obinna froze, clutching the dog tighter. The SUV lingered, its engine humming like a predator circling prey. And in that suspended moment, Obinna felt the truth settle in his bones. He had not just saved a dog. He had stumbled into something dangerous, something far larger than his world of hunger and survival. The SUV inched forward, stopping briefly before continuing into the distance. But the reflection of its windows burned into Obinna's mind, leaving him with a chilling certainty. Someone, somewhere, had noticed. Obinna sat rigid beneath the bridge, the dog trembling, in his arms, as the black SUV disappeared into the night, carrying with it a shadow of secrets he was yet to uncover. The night stretched long and uneasy. Obinna had carried the wounded dog back to his tiny room, a narrow, crumbling space tucked inside a face-me-I-face-you compound where poverty sang louder than joy. The air reeked of kerosene, unwashed clothes, and sweat, the walls stained with years of neglect. His neighbors argued over missing buckets, children cried in the background, and PHCN had long taken the light. In the darkness, only a flickering candle lit the room, casting dancing shadows on the peeling walls. Obinna laid the dog gently on a torn mat. He cleaned its wounds with water and a rag, whispering encouragement as though the animal could understand every word. The dog whimpered softly, its eyes still filled with exhaustion, but also a flicker of trust. Then the collar caught his attention again. Its gemstones shimmered faintly in the candlelight, far too pristine for a creature left to die on the streets. Obinna tilted it in his hands, running his fingers along its edges. He froze when his thumb pressed a hidden clasp. With a soft click, a compartment shifted, revealing a tiny embedded chip, sleek, metallic, and utterly foreign to his world of scraps and survival. His heart pounded. This was no ordinary dog collar. This was a container of secrets. He stared at the engraved initials again. CA. The weight of them felt heavier now. Whoever this CA was, he or she commanded a world so far beyond Obinna's that it felt like stumbling into another galaxy. Whispers from the street floated into his mind. CA could only mean one man, Chief Agu. Lagos had long spoken his name with both reverence and fear. He was the oil baron whose mansion stood tall in Banana Island, its glass walls glittering against the ocean. He owned fleets of cars, private jets, and whispered influence over politicians. Men like Obinna were invisible to him, yet his shadow touched every corner of the nation. Obinna swallowed hard. What was a billionaire's dog doing broken under a bridge? Why had it been left to die? And what secrets lay hidden in its collar? He turned to the dog again, stroking its fur softly. "You must have a name," he whispered. After a pause, he murmured, "Zara." The dog blinked slowly, almost approving. From that night forward, Zara was no longer a nameless creature, but a companion bound to Obinna by fate. Days passed, but the collar refused to leave Obinna's thoughts. It became an object of both fascination and dread, sitting on his rickety table like a forbidden treasure. Each time he glanced at it, the gemstones seemed to whisper promises of danger. He wanted to throw it away, yet something inside him wouldn't let go. One evening, as he sat with Zara, Obinna muttered Agu's name aloud, almost to test his suspicion. The reaction was instant. Zara stiffened, her ears flattening. She growled low, her body trembling violently, as though the name alone dredged up memories of cruelty. Obinna's chest tightened. This wasn't just coincidence. Zara's past was tied to Agu in ways that words could not explain. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling, his mind whirling. He thought of his own life, barely surviving, scorned for his poverty, mocked for his failures. Against the weight of Lagos, he was nothing. Yet here he sat, holding a key to secrets that might shake the very ground beneath Banana Island. The room grew colder, the silence heavier. He remembered a proverb his late father once told him. When the poor man holds the truth, it is both his weapon and his coffin. Obinna could not shake the feeling that his life had already begun to change in ways he could not control. He felt watched, as though shadows followed him even in daylight. Whenever he stepped outside, he caught glimpses of men in cars parked at odd corners, their gazes too sharp, too curious. He told himself it was paranoia, but deep down he knew better. And yet, despite the fear gnawing at him, he could not bring himself to let go of the collar. Something about Zara, about her scars and her haunting eyes, demanded justice. The animal carried memories locked deep inside, memories that perhaps only the collar could unlock. One late evening, when the world outside his compound had fallen into its usual restless chorus of shouting, pounding pestles, and grinding generators, Obinna sat again with the collar. He studied its edges carefully, fingers trembling as he traced every line. Then his nails scraped against a tiny seam he had not noticed before. His heart leapt. Slowly, carefully, he pried the seam open. The leather shifted, revealing a smaller compartment tucked within the collar's inner lining. From inside, he pulled out a sleek object no bigger than his thumb, a tiny encrypted flash drive. The candle flame wavered as Obinna stared at it, his breath shallow. In his palm lay something far more dangerous than hunger, poverty, or ridicule. This drive did not belong in his world. It was the kind of object people killed for, the kind of secret that toppled dynasties. Obinna's eyes flicked toward Zara, who gazed back at him silently, her body still fragile but her eyes glowing with a quiet intensity. In that moment, he realized the truth. He had not merely saved a dog. He had unearthed the first thread of a hidden empire, a thread that, once pulled, might unravel everything. Obinna clenched the flash drive in his fist, the candlelight flickering across his determined face. Outside, footsteps echoed faintly in the compound corridor, stopping just at his door. Morning broke sluggishly over Lagos, the sun painting the city in its golden haze. Yet for Obinna, The day carried no warmth. Sleep had eluded him all night. The tiny flash drive burned like a brand in his pocket, whispering of secrets too dangerous for a man of his means. Still, his curiosity gnawed at him until he could no longer resist. By midday, Obinna found himself standing before a roadside computer cafe, its peeling paint and blinking neon sign promising fast internet, cheapest in town. The hum of generators filled the air, mixing with the smell of suya smoke drifting from a nearby stand. He paid for 30 minutes with the last crumpled note in his pocket and slipped inside. The cafe was a world of its own. Old Dell desktops lined narrow counters, their screens flickering. Young men with braided hair argued over FIFA matches, while university students typed furiously at assignments. The air buzzed with chatter, gossip, and the rhythmic pounding of keyboards. Obinna sat at the farthest corner, plugging in the flash drive with trembling hands. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the screen flickered, revealing folders labeled in cryptic codes. His heart raced. Clicking one open, he was greeted not by words, but by numbers. Endless strings of digits, bank account details, transfers amounting to billions of dollars, and names of offshore havens across Dubai, Geneva, and the Caribbean. He blinked, stunned. Never in his life had he seen so many zeros attached to money. His own stomach twisted with hunger, yet on this screen, wealth cascaded endlessly, like an ocean. For him, N500 was survival. For these men, billions were shuffled across continents like pocket change. But it was not just money. Confidential contracts appeared, oil drilling licenses, government concessions, deals signed in secrecy with foreign firms. Obinna scrolled faster, the weight of what he was holding pressing deeper into his chest. This was not mere corruption. This was an empire, an invisible web binding politicians, corporations, and power brokers into one sprawling shadow. A whisper floated behind him, dragging him back to reality. "See that guy there? You dey see his screen?" a young voice muttered. Obinna stiffened, his eyes darting to the reflection in the dusty monitor. Two tech-savvy boys nearby had caught sight of the numbers. "Guy, n offshore code ZO," one whispered to the other. "This n the kind of file that controls Nigeria itself." Obinna's pulse quickened. He quickly minimized the window, pretending to scroll through a news site. But his ears caught the phrase again, Shadow Empire. The words burrowed into his mind like thorns. That was what he was looking at. Not just a billionaire's accounts, but a hidden empire shaping the destiny of millions without their knowledge. His throat tightened as he stared back at the blank desktop screen. Why him? Why now? He was a man who could barely afford Gary and ground nuts. He had no power, no allies, no protection. Yet fate had dropped into his lap, the kind of evidence that governments had failed to expose. Obinna leaned back, pressing his palms to his face. He remembered his mother's voice from long ago, urging him to be careful with dreams too big for his hands. "The poor man's heart cannot carry the rich man's burden," she used to say. But here he was, with the burden pressing on his very chest. He pulled out the flash drive and slipped it into his pocket, ending his session. The cafe noise faded into a distant hum as dread wrapped around him like a cold cloak. He could feel the weight of invisible eyes tracking him, following his every breath. As he stepped outside, the bright Lagos sun blinded him. The streets bustled with hawkers, kiki drivers, and school children, but Obinna's gaze narrowed sharply. Parked across the street were two men in dark suits, their posture too stiff for ordinary pedestrians. Their eyes swept the area casually. But Obinna caught the subtle way they scanned him from head to toe. He walked quickly, Zara trotting at his side. The dog's ears pricked, nose twitching with unease. The city felt suddenly claustrophobic, every corner a threat, every stranger a possible watcher. By the time he reached the crowded market road, sweat drenched his shirt despite the breeze. He dared not look back, though his instincts screamed that footsteps followed. He turned into an alley, his heart hammering, hoping the crowd would shield him. But Zara stopped abruptly. Her fur bristled, her growl low and fierce. Obinna followed her gaze. A tall man in dark sunglasses leaned against the wall, pretending to scroll on his phone. His expression was too calm, too deliberate. When his eyes met Obinna's, a faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips. Obinna's throat went dry. The billions he had seen on that screen, the shadow empire whispered about in the cafe. Suddenly it all felt alive, breathing down his neck. He tugged at Zara's leash, whispering urgently, "Let's go." But Zara did not move. She snarled, her growl rising into a sharp bark that echoed down the narrow street. The man in sunglasses pushed himself off the wall, his steps deliberate, his smile fading into something darker, as Obinna clutched Zara's leash tighter and realized he had already been marked. By the time Obinna reached the gated streets of Banana Island, Lagos felt like a different universe. The danfos, the market cries, the smoke of roasted corn, all of it faded behind him, replaced by quiet, manicured roads lined with palm trees and trimmed hedges. The very air smelled different here, perfumed with wealth and silence. Obinna clutched Zara's leash, his steps hesitant, as though each one trespassed on forbidden ground. His slippers slapped awkwardly against the polished tarmac, drawing curious stares from drivers in sleek SUVs who whisked past, their tinted windows hiding lives he could only imagine. His eyes widened at the sight before him. Mansions of glass and marble stood proudly, their walls gleaming under the late afternoon sun. Bentleys and Lamborghinis glistened in driveways like ornaments. Infinity pools stretched toward the horizon, mirroring the golden Lagos sky. At the marina, private yachts rocked gently on the water, their names painted in silver letters. The island was less a neighborhood than a dream stitched into reality, a place where even silence cost billions. Obinna swallowed hard. He had grown up hearing whispers about Banana Island, about the billionaires who lived as gods here, untouchable by ordinary laws. But to walk its streets, to breathe its air, made him feel invisible, a shadow wandering through a kingdom not meant for his kind. Then his gaze fell upon the mansion that dwarfed the rest, a sprawling estate of glass walls and steel beams that seemed to stretch endlessly. Its gates were tall, iron rods twisted into intricate patterns, guarded by men in uniform with earpieces tucked into their ears. Their expressions were blank, professional, yet their eyes were sharp and watchful. This was it, Chief Agu's fortress. Obinna stood rooted, awe and dread battling within him. He had never seen such unapologetic display of power. Through the glass walls, he glimpsed chandeliers dripping with crystal, staircases that coiled like serpents, and hallways lined with art that could pay his rent for decades. Every brick of the estate seemed to whisper authority, every guard a reminder that trespassers vanished without a trace. Zara stiffened beside him, her tail low, ears pinned back. She stared at the mansion with a mixture of recognition and terror. Obinna's chest tightened. This was no ordinary reaction. She remembered this place. She had lived within those glass walls once, and whatever had happened there had scarred her soul as much as her body. Slowly, almost unconsciously, Obinna stepped closer. He pressed his palm against the iron gate, the cold metal sending a shiver through him. It was more than steel. It was the barrier between two worlds, the untouchable elite and the invisible poor. For a moment, he felt the full weight of his insignificance pressing down, suffocating him. Then voices broke the silence. Two servants approached from inside the gate, carrying baskets of groceries. Their conversation drifted into the still air. "Ah, Madame Chinello, if only she had kept quiet," one whispered. The other sighed heavily. "Her death still dey disturb me. You know it no be accident. Rich men's secrets dey kill faster than poison." Obinna's pulse quickened. Chinello. The name hit him like a drum beat. Chief Agu's late wife, whose mysterious death had been gossiped about across Lagos, but never investigated. Newspapers had called it a tragic accident. Yet here were servants, speaking in hushed tones of something darker. His gaze dropped to Zara, who trembled violently, her eyes fixed on the mansion as though seeing ghosts only she could recall. The pieces clicked into place. Zara had belonged to Chinello, the scars on her body, her fear of Agu's name, her desperate flight into the streets. It all made sense. Obinna's breath grew shallow. This dog had not just been abandoned. She had escaped. She was a living witness to something terrible, something buried under the glass and marble of Agu's empire. The sun dipped lower, painting the mansion in gold, but with it came a heavy silence. The servants retreated. The guards shifted positions, and the estate settled into its eerie, oppressive calm. Even the air seemed to hush itself in deference to the power that lived within those walls. Obinna lingered longer than he should have, his hand still pressed against the gate, his thoughts tangled between fear and defiance. He knew he was playing with fire, yet he could not walk away. Fate had drawn him here, and fate would not let him turn back. Then the low hum of an approaching engine broke the silence. Obinna froze, his heart lurching. From the far end of the street, a Rolls-Royce Phantom glided forward, its silver body gleaming like a moving fortress. The gates parted with mechanical precision, the guards snapping into perfect formation. Obinna's breath caught as the car slowed just inside the compound. Through the half-lowered window, he saw him for the first time. Chief Agu. His face was chiseled with power, his eyes sharp as daggers, his smile cold and unreadable. For a fleeting moment, their gazes locked, rich man and poor stranger, predator and prey. Obinna's knees trembled, yet he did not move. Agu's stare pierced through him, lingering as though peeling back his very soul. Then with a faint smirk, the window rolled up, and the Rolls-Royce slid deeper into the estate. Obinna staggered back, his palm still tingling from the gate's cold iron, his heart pounding with the realization he had been seen, not just by the guards, not just by fate, but by Agu himself. Lagos by night was alive in its own rhythm, streetlights flickering against crowded roads, the smoky aroma of grilled suya hanging thick in the air, and distant laughter spilling from roadside beer parlors. It was in this noisy, chaotic heartbeat of the city that Obinna found himself seated at a roadside buka, his hunger gnawing louder than the danfo horns blaring in the distance. He tore into a small plate of rice and stew, the cheapest meal he could afford, his mind still spinning with the image of Chief Agu's piercing gaze from earlier. He muttered to himself under his breath, words filled with unease. This man, if only people knew. A voice interrupted him, clear and sharp, yet warm with curiosity. "Who are you talking about?" Obinna turned, startled. Sitting a few tables away was a young woman with striking eyes that glowed with determination, Her notepad lay open beside her untouched meal, pen resting casually, as if always ready to capture a story. Her name was Amara. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Did I hear you mention Agu?" Obinna hesitated. To speak his name out loud felt dangerous, as though the night itself might carry it into unwelcome ears. But there was something disarming in her gaze, an intensity that was not born of idle gossip, but of purpose. "Yes," he said finally, his tone cautious. "Chief Agu." Amara's lips pressed into a thin line. For a brief moment, pain flickered across her face. "I've been following that man for months," she confessed. "My father's company was destroyed because of men like him. Contracts stolen, debts fabricated, livelihoods ruined. He died a broken man. Since then, I promised myself I'd chase the truth, no matter how high it hides." Her words struck Obinna like a spark in dry grass. Until now, his burden had been a silent one. But here was someone who understood, not only the danger but also the hunger for justice. Slowly, cautiously, he began to share his story. He told her about Zara, the dog with the jeweled collar, about the flash drive filled with numbers that made his stomach twist, about the mansion with glass walls where secrets whispered behind iron gates. Amara listened with the intensity of someone gathering pieces of a puzzle she had long been chasing. She scribbled notes, asked sharp questions, and leaned closer every time his voice dropped lower. When he spoke of Zara's reaction to Agu's name, Amara's brows furrowed. "That's not coincidence," she whispered. Almost as if to prove her right, Zara patted closer to Amara's chair. She sniffed cautiously, then wagged her tail before laying her head gently on Amara's lap. Obinna blinked in surprise. Zara had trusted no one but him since that night under the bridge. Yet here she was, surrendering her guarded heart to a stranger. Amara smiled softly, stroking Zara's fur. "She knows I'm on her side," she said. "Animals carry memories we can't erase. This one has seen things." Obinna felt a warmth stir in his chest. Not just relief, but something deeper, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. For the first time, he wasn't alone. The buka buzzed with chatter around them, but in their corner of the world, a fragile alliance was being born. Amara spoke of networks of whistleblowers and digital activists who used encrypted platforms to share truths that newspapers refused to publish. She explained how powerful men like Agu silenced traditional media, but could not fully erase the internet's endless pathways. "You don't fight someone like Agu with fists," she said firmly. "You fight him with information." Her words lit a fire in Obinna. All his life he had fought only for survival, never daring to dream of challenging the men who ruled the city. Yet now, sitting across from this fearless woman, with Zara curled loyally at their feet, he felt a different kind of strength. As the night stretched on, they walked the buzzing streets together. Lagos lights shimmered on puddles left by the evening rain, the air alive with music from distant clubs. Amidst the chaos, their voices lowered into conspiratorial whispers, plotting not for riches but for truth. A new feeling grew between them, delicate as a flame in the wind. Obinna caught himself watching, the way Amara's lips curved when she smiled, how her eyes burned brighter every time she spoke of justice. He didn't say it aloud, but the seed of love had been planted, fragile but undeniable. Yet even fragile beginnings are noticed by shadows. Later that night, as Amara opened her laptop in her modest apartment to examine the files Obinna had entrusted to her, the screen flickered strangely. She frowned, tapping the keyboard. Suddenly the desktop went black, lines of code flashing rapidly before her eyes. Her folders vanished one by one, consumed by an unseen force. "What's happening?" Obinna asked, his stomach dropping. Amara's face hardened. "Someone found us." The laptop shut itself down with a sharp click, the screen dead and lifeless. In the reflection of the dark monitor, Amara and Obinna saw only their anxious faces, lit by fear, and the realization that Agu's reach had already entered their lives. The following day, the air in Lagos felt heavier, as though the city itself conspired to suffocate them. Amara clutched her lifeless laptop under one arm, while Obinna kept the flash drive pressed deep in his pocket. They moved quickly, avoiding eye contact with strangers, their footsteps weaving through the city's restless chaos until they reached the buzzing nerve center of Yaba, Nigeria's unofficial tech hub. Here the air hummed with innovation. The narrow streets were alive with computer shops, repair stalls, and roadside coders advertising services with handwritten signs. Generators coughed smoke into the air, while the glow of neon lights illuminated faces bent over screens. Amidst this energy was Kunle, a tech wizard whispered about among students and small activists. If anyone could unlock the mysteries of the flash drive, it was him. Kunle greeted Amara warmly, his dreadlocks tied back, his fingers stained with solder. "You've brought something dangerous, haven't you?" he said, half smiling. Amara's silence was enough answer. He ushered them into a cramped office, stacked with wires, hard drives, and screens flickering with lines of code. Obinna placed the flash drive on the desk like an offering. Kunle slid it into his custom-built system, his fingers flying across the keyboard with effortless precision. Within minutes, encrypted files filled the screen, symbols and numbers scrolling like ancient hieroglyphs. He muttered under his breath, "This isn't child's play. Whoever hid this didn't want ordinary eyes finding it." Obinna's throat tightened as he watched. Each second felt like peeling back the skin of a beast too dangerous to stare at. Finally, Kunle cracked a portion of the code. Documents burst onto the screen. Shipments of crude oil disguised as agricultural exports. Coded transfers linking shell companies in Lagos to banks in Geneva, Panama, and Dubai. Names of politicians appeared in initials tied to contracts worth billions. Amara leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "It's bigger than I thought," she whispered. "This isn't just local corruption. Agu is tied into a global web." Obinna's gaze locked on a section showing photographs of Niger Delta communities, villages once lush with green riversides, now drowned in black sludge. Children stood barefoot in oily water, their eyes hollow. Fishermen's boats rotted along poisoned banks. Obinna's hands clenched into fists. "This," his voice cracked. "This is my home. My village river was like this. We used to fetch water. We used to fish. Until the oil spills came. We thought it was fate or government neglect. But now—" He broke off, choking on rage and grief. It was men like Agu. The room fell silent except for the hum of machines. For Obinna, the numbers on the screen were no longer abstract. They were personal. They were scars on his childhood. Then Zara stirred. She whined softly, patting closer to the monitor as Kunle clicked another folder. On the screen appeared an old family photo, Chief Agu, his late wife, Chinelo, and standing proudly beside them. Zara, her fur glossy, her eyes bright. Obinna and Amara exchanged a sharp glance. Zara pressed her nose against the screen, whining louder, tail low. Her reaction was visceral, as if remembering the days of comfort now twisted by trauma. Amara's voice dropped. "Chinelo Agu? She must have been trying to expose him. That's why she died. And Zara saw everything." The room chilled with unspoken truth. Chinelo's ghost seemed to linger in the files, in the dog's scars, in the shadows of the empire she had dared to defy. Kunle leaned back, his usually confident face grave. "You don't understand. These files are dynamite. If you release this, Agu won't just send boys after you. International vultures will circle too. Governments, corporations. They'll want you gone. This file is a death sentence." His warning landed heavy, yet neither Amara nor Obinna flinched. Fear quivered in their veins, yes, but alongside it pulsed a conviction stronger than either had ever felt. The truth was too large to bury. Amara's jaw tightened. Then maybe it's worth dying for. Kunle's eyes widened at her defiance. He shook his head slowly, lowering his voice to a whisper. "You two need to vanish. Leave Lagos. Leave Nigeria if you can. Agu doesn't forgive, and he doesn't forget." Obinna felt Zara press against his leg, her warmth steadying him. He looked at Amara and saw in her eyes the same flame burning inside him. They couldn't run. Running would mean surrendering Chinello's voice, surrendering his village's rivers, surrendering the justice every file on that drive screamed for. But before Obinna could respond, a sharp sound shattered the tense silence. The metal door rattled violently, the padlock clanging against the frame. Zara leapt to her feet, barking furiously. Kunle's fingers froze. Above the keyboard, his face draining of color. "They've found us." The door shook harder, dust falling from the ceiling as shadows moved just beyond the frosted glass. Obinna clutched Zara's collar. Amara grabbed the flash drive, and all three exchanged a single terrified glance, knowing that the empire they had dared to touch was already at their doorstep. The weight of Kunle's warning still clung to Obinna's chest as he returned to his small face-me-I-face-you apartment. The night air was heavy with dampness, carrying the smell of fried plantain and the smoke of kerosene lamps. Inside the compound, children played loudly, mothers argued over missing water buckets, and men debated politics over cheap gin. It was ordinary chaos, yet Obinna's world had changed forever. But something else unsettled him even more. His roommate, Tochukwu, who only days before had been as broke as him, was now strutting about with a new smartphone, its shiny screen flashing like a beacon. Fresh sneakers gleamed on his feet, their tags barely cut off. He had bought new clothes, too, his once-faded shirts replaced by crisp polos. Obinna watched silently, suspicion gnawing at him. Poverty was a thief that rarely brought blessings overnight. He had grown up knowing that sudden wealth in their neighborhood almost always carried a rotten secret. Tochukwu laughed loudly with neighbors, showing off his phone's features, snapping pictures of himself as if he had climbed out of years of misery overnight. When he caught Obinna's gaze, his smile faltered, if only for a second. Amara, who was visiting, pulled Obinna aside. Her voice was sharp, but worried. "This is not coincidence. Agu's men are everywhere. He may already have someone close to you feeding him information." Obinna shook his head, though his chest tightened. "Tochukwu is my brother in struggle. We've shared hunger, shared cold nights. He wouldn't—" Amara's eyes narrowed. Loyalty bends when hunger meets money. Don't be blind, Obinna. The tension brewed like storm clouds. That night, as Obinna lay on his mat, Zara stirred restlessly at his side. Then suddenly she jumped to her feet, barking wildly, her nose pressed against the crack of the door. Obinna rose in alarm and opened it slightly. On the doorstep sat a small plate of jollof rice, steaming hot, too perfect, too suspicious. Zara's growls deepened. She sniffed once, twice, before recoiling sharply, barking with frantic urgency. Obinna's stomach twisted. It was bait, food laced with something deadly. Someone wanted him gone. He glanced toward Tochukwu's corner. His roommate pretended to sleep, his body still, but Obinna saw the faint twitch in his jaw. The room felt suddenly suffocating. By morning, Obinna could no longer bury the storm inside him. "Tochukwu," he said firmly, his voice low but trembling, "tell me the truth. Did Agu's men come to you?" The young man's eyes darted away. His silence spoke louder than words. Finally, Tochukwu sighed heavily, his shoulders slumping. "Obinna, what was I supposed to do? They came to me with money I've never touched in my life. They said all I had to do was tell them where you go, who you meet. That's it. I didn't mean you harm. I only wanted to eat, to survive." The confession cut Obinna deeper than any knife could. His mind flashed with memories of nights spent laughing with Tochukwu under the bridge, both of them dreaming of a better tomorrow. To learn that the brother he trusted had sold him for coins felt like betrayal, etched in fire. Amara's face hardened as she stepped forward. "Survival does not excuse betrayal. You've put his life in danger. You've put all of us in danger." Tochukwu's eyes glistened. "Easy for you to say. You have your fire, your dreams. Me, I only have hunger. Do you know what it means to wake up every day with nothing? When money knocks, you answer, even if it comes with shadows." Obinna's chest heaved with the weight of choice. Anger roared within him, urging him to cast Tochukwu out, to sever every bond they had shared. Yet beneath it, a gentler voice reminded him of his own desperation, of nights he had nearly begged strangers for crumbs. With trembling hands he whispered, "I forgive you, Tochukwu, but I cannot trust you anymore." The words struck harder than a slap. Tochukwu's lips quivered, but he said nothing. He turned away, shrinking into his corner like a shadow fading from light. That evening, Obinna sat outside with Amara and Zara. The dog lay curled at their feet, her eyes sharp and restless, sensing the unease in the air. Amara placed her hand gently on Obinna's. "Sometimes, to move forward, you must let go of the ones who can't walk your path. You and I, we know what we're fighting for. We can't afford cracks in our circle." Her touch was steady, her presence like a lighthouse in the storm. For the first time, Obinna felt that the bond between them was not just about justice anymore. It was about love, a fragile rising flame that betrayal could not extinguish. But the city itself felt colder now. Every passing face seemed suspicious, every corner held unseen eyes. The shadows of Agu's empire crept closer with each breath, pressing them against walls they could not see. Late that night, as Amara flipped open a replacement laptop in her apartment, a notification popped up on her screen. It was a message without words, just a series of photographs. Her hands froze. They were pictures of her and Obinna together, eating at the buka, walking the streets, sitting with Zara. Every image was taken from afar, blurry but precise. Someone had been following them, watching them. Amara's hands trembled as she turned the screen toward Obinna. His stomach dropped as he stared at their captured faces, the proof that they were no longer just hunting secrets. The shadows had marked them as prey. Lagos nights had their own kind of magic, restless, intoxicating, alive with promise and danger. High above the chaos, on the rooftop of Amara's modest apartment building, Obinna and Amara found a rare pocket of silence. The city stretched around them in glittering fragments, headlights crawling along the Third Mainland Bridge, neon signs pulsing from distant bars, and the soft glow of skyscrapers standing tall like sentinels. They sat close, Zara nestled between them, her breathing steady. The wind whispered against their skin, carrying faint echoes of laughter, music, and life below. But up here, it felt like the world had paused just for them. Obinna broke the silence first. His voice was low, uncertain. "Amara, why do you stand with me? You deserve someone better, someone who isn't broke, someone who isn't hunted." Amara turned to him, her eyes soft yet fierce. "You think wealth makes a man worthy? No. Worthiness is in courage, in kindness, and you, Obinna, have more of that than any billionaire in Banana Island." He swallowed, his chest tightening. "I've spent so many years feeling invisible. Sometimes I look at you and wonder if this is all a dream, that a woman like you would choose a man like me." Her fingers brushed his cheek, gentle yet firm. "You're not invisible to me. I see you. The boy who wanted to heal animals, the man who risked his own hunger to save a broken dog. That is worth more than all the riches Agu can flaunt." Zara stirred at her words, resting her head on Obinna's leg as if affirming Amara's vow. The sight filled Obinna's heart with a warmth he had never known. The three of them, bound not by blood or wealth, but by shared pain and chosen love, felt like a fragile family carved out of fire. Amara leaned back, gazing at the stars barely visible through Lagos's haze. "When I was a child, my father worked for men like Agu. I saw how they crushed him, stripping away everything until he died of despair. That night, I swore I'd never bow to them. They may own land, money, and power, but they will never own my fear." Obinna's hand found hers, fingers lacing together. In that rooftop silence, they whispered vows not written on paper, but etched into their souls. To fight, to endure, to love even if it cost them everything. And yet beneath the tenderness, danger stalked them like a shadow. Their days became a careful dance of planning and secrecy. Amara guided Obinna into a new world of digital resistance. She showed him how to encrypt files, how to use anonymous servers, how to send information across the globe without leaving footprints. "You can't trust Nigerian media," she explained, her fingers moving swiftly across the keyboard. "Most of them are bought, but the internet, it's harder to silence." Obinna leaned in, learning quickly, his determination sharpening. For the first time in years, he felt useful, not just surviving, but fighting for something bigger than himself. Together, they mapped out a plan to leak Agu's files, the offshore accounts, the oil shipments, the coded contracts. They dreamed of a day when his empire would crumble under the weight of truth. In between their plotting, love bloomed in stolen glances and quiet touches. They shared roasted corn at street corners, laughed at Zara's playful antics, and whispered their dreams in the quiet hours of dawn. "After this," Amara said one night, her head resting against his shoulder, "maybe we could leave, start fresh, Ghana, maybe even Europe, a place where no one knows us, where no shadow follows us." Obinna closed his eyes, daring to imagine it, walking frally, Zara bounding across open fields, laughter unchained by fear. A life not defined by poverty or secrets, but by love. For the first time, Obinna began to believe that freedom might be possible. But freedom, like glass, is fragile. Late one evening, after hours of working with Amara on encrypted drafts of their leak, Obinna reached for his phone to check the time. The screen flickered once before a new message appeared. No name, no number, just cold words glowing against the darkness. "We know where she sleeps." His blood turned to ice. He looked at Amara, who was still typing, her face lit by the soft glow of the screen. For a moment he couldn't breathe. The shadows had crossed a line. They were no longer warning him. They were threatening the very woman who had given him hope. Obinna's hands trembled as he showed her the message. Amara's eyes widened, but she did not flinch. Instead, she placed her hand firmly over his. "Then we don't have time to waste. If they're watching us this closely, it means we're closer to the truth than ever." Zara growled low, her eyes fixed on the window, as if sensing unseen eyes in the night. Obinna tightened his grip on Amara's hand, the words still burning on his phone screen. Outside, the wind rattled the window, carrying with it the chilling reminder. They were being hunted, and the hunters were already at their door. The summons came, not with guards or guns, but with velvet courtesy. A sleek black car pulled up to the mouth of Obinna's street, its polished body gleaming under the sun, the driver dressed immaculately in a suit. Neighbors watched from their verandas, whispering in awe and suspicion. "Who is this poor man to command such a car?" they muttered. The driver stepped out, his voice smooth but firm. "Chief Agu requests your company." It was not an offer. It was a command draped in politeness. Obinna's stomach twisted, but he knew refusal would only hasten danger. He glanced at Amara, who gripped his hand. Her eyes burned with both fear and faith. "Whatever happens," she whispered, "remember, you're not fighting for yourself. You're fighting for truth." Zara barked as if echoing her words. With a steadying breath, Obinna climbed into the car. The journey to Banana Island was surreal. The closer they drew to Agu's mansion, the more Obinna felt the weight of entering the lion's den. The iron gates swung open, and the car rolled across a driveway paved with imported stone. When Obinna stepped out, the sheer grandeur of the estate struck him like a wave. Inside, the mansion glowed with unrestrained wealth. Chandeliers dripped with crystals that caught the light like diamonds. Gold staircases curved elegantly, leading to balconies lined with rare artifacts. The air smelled faintly of polished wood and expensive wine. Servants in pristine uniforms glided silently, their presence barely felt but keenly efficient. At the center of it all sat Chief Agu. He rose to greet Obinna, dressed in a flowing white agbada embroidered with gold threads. His smile was warm, almost fatherly, yet his eyes glittered with something sharper than kindness. He extended his hand. "Obinna, the man who saved my dog." Obinna bowed his head slightly, though Zara growled low at his side, tugging against the leash. Agu's eyes flicked briefly to the dog before returning to Obinna with a faint, knowing smirk. They were led into a lavish dining hall where wine glasses sparkled under the chandelier. A long table stretched endlessly, though only 2 seats were set. Agu gestured grandly. "Eat, drink. You are my guest tonight." Obinna sat cautiously, his eyes darting to the gilded surroundings. The contrast between his one-room shack and this golden palace stung deeply. Every polished surface reflected his poverty. Every glass of wine reminded him of water fetched from rusty taps. Agu poured wine into Obinna's glass, his voice smooth as silk. "You are a bold young man, that much I admire. But boldness is a dangerous thing when directed at the wrong man." Obinna said nothing, his heart pounding. Agu leaned back, his smile widening. "I am not your enemy, Obinna. In fact, I could be your salvation. Imagine this. You leave behind these dirty streets. I give you a new house in Lekki, a job abroad, steady income. You marry a fine woman, raise children who never know hunger. All I ask is simple. Forget what you think you've seen. Live your life, and let me live mine." The words struck Obinna like daggers wrapped in velvet. Every image Agu painted was a dream Obinna had buried long ago. Comfort, dignity, freedom from want. For a moment temptation clawed at him, whispering, what if? What if survival is enough? But then Amara's face filled his mind. Her voice echoed. "You're not invisible to me, I see you." He thought of Zara's scars, of rivers poisoned in his village, of Chinello's photo locked inside the files. He clenched his fists under the table. "I cannot be bought," Obinna said finally, his voice trembling but firm. Agu's smile faltered, the mask slipping just slightly. His eyes hardened. "Careful, boy. Integrity is noble, but it does not feed the stomach. Poverty will not thank you for refusing gold." Obinna lifted his gaze, meeting Agu's stare. "And wealth will not bury the truth." The air thickened with silence. For the first time, Agu leaned forward, studying him intently, as though examining a rare, dangerous specimen. A flicker of genuine admiration crossed his face. "You are fearless," Agu murmured, "or perhaps foolish, but either way it makes you interesting." Zara broke the tension with a ferocious bark, teeth bared at Agu, as though recognizing the hand that once caused her pain. The sound echoed sharply against the gilded walls, shattering the fragile pretense of civility. Guards shifted uneasily at the corners of the hall, but Agu raised a hand, silencing them. His eyes never left Obinna's. Slowly, his smile returned, colder this time. He leaned close, his voice dropping to a whisper that slithered into Obinna's bones. "You are walking in your own grave." Obinna stiffened, the weight of the threat pressing heavier than the gold chandeliers above them. In that moment, he knew he had crossed the line from which there was no return. The days that followed Obinna's perilous visit to Chief Agu's mansion were heavy with silence. The air felt charged, as if the city itself was holding its breath. At Amara's small apartment, the glow of laptop screens painted their weary faces in cold light as they sifted through more files from the flash drive, desperate for a decisive blow cast against Agu's empire. That was when Amara stumbled upon a folder buried deep within layers of encryption. Its name was simple: CA. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside were documents and voice recordings that pulled them both into a chilling truth. Chinelo Agu had not died in an accident. Her death, long reported as a drowning at a private resort, was carefully staged. Weeks before she died, Chinelo had been collecting evidence against her husband. Emails, financial statements, recordings of whispered conversations. In one file, her voice came alive through the tinny laptop speakers, soft but resolute. "If the world knew what Chikezie has done, if they knew the rivers he has poisoned, the lives he has crushed, maybe they would see the truth. I will not be silent anymore." Then the recording cut abruptly, like a candle snuffed mid-flame. Obinna and Amara sat frozen, the weight of her unfinished words hanging heavy in the room. "She was silenced," Amara whispered, her voice shaking. "She tried to expose him, and he killed her for it." Obinna's hands clenched into fists. He could almost see Chinelo on that last night, pacing alone, clutching files too heavy for her slender arms. He imagined her fear, the way shadows must have closed in, the betrayal in realizing her own husband was the monster she had vowed to fight. And then the cold waters swallowing her voice forever. But Zara had escaped. Obinna looked down at the dog resting quietly at his feet. For the first time, he saw her not just as a creature he saved, but as Chinelo's last surviving witness, carrying scars that spoke where words could not. Amara's eyes glistened as she reached down to stroke Zara's fur. "She isn't just a dog, Obinna. She is evidence, living proof of his cruelty. That's why she ran. That's why she found you." The thought tightened Obinna's chest with something more than fear. It felt like destiny, as if fate had chosen him to finish the fight Chinelo could not. He was no longer just a poor stranger who stumbled into secrets. He was her echo, her continuation, the one carrying her unfinished cry for justice. Outside, Lagos buzzed with life as though nothing had changed, traffic choking the roads, hawkers shouting, lovers laughing in the night. The contrast was unbearable. How could a city carry on while a woman's truth lay buried beneath glass mansions and gold staircases? Obinna rose, pacing the room. "We can't stop now," he said firmly. "It's no longer about money, no longer about fear. It's about Chinelo. We have to finish what she started." Amara nodded, her face lit with conviction. "Then we prepare the final leak. Not partial files, not hints, everything. We burn his empire with the truth." Together they set to work. Amara drafted encrypted documents, stitching Chinelo's files with the offshore accounts, the oil shipments, the coded contracts. Obinna wrote a personal testimony detailing everything he had seen and heard. Zara stayed close, watching them with unblinking eyes, as if aware of the storm gathering around her. The room felt like a war bunker, two warriors arming themselves not with weapons, but with words and proof sharp enough to cut through lies. But with every file uploaded, every password cracked, the danger thickened around them. They knew Agu would not wait idly for his empire to crumble. Each keystroke was a countdown, each encrypted message another reason for shadows to close in. Late one night, when their work stretched into exhaustion, Amara leaned against Obinna, her voice soft but steady. "If something happens to me, promise me you'll finish this." Obinna turned sharply, his voice breaking. "Don't say that. Nothing will happen to you." She smiled faintly, her eyes tired yet unafraid. "Promise me, Obinna." He swallowed hard, gripping her hand. "I promise." The words hung between them, a vow heavier than love itself. The following evening, Amara left to meet a contact who could help them secure international channels for their leak. She kissed Obinna softly at the door, her eyes carrying both fire and tenderness. Zara whined as she stepped into the waiting taxi. Obinna watched the vehicle disappear into the traffic, unease clawing at his stomach. Hours passed. Then night fell. Still she did not return. His phone remained silent. Her messages never came. At first he told himself it was traffic, a delayed meeting. But deep down, a chill began to spread in his veins. He called her number. It rang once, then died. He called again, switched off. Zara paced restlessly, growling at the window as if sensing what he already feared. Amara had vanished into the Lagos night, swallowed whole by the same shadows that had silenced Chinelo. Obinna barely slept the night Amara failed to return. Every passing hour pressed like a stone on his chest. The streets outside his compound buzzed as usual, hawkers calling, generators rumbling, radios blaring Fuji music. But for him, the world had fallen eerily quiet. Each unanswered call, each message that failed to deliver, tightened the noose of dread around his neck. Zara paced restlessly, whining, scratching at the door as if urging him to move. Finally, Obinna gave in, leash in hand, though his heart felt heavier than iron. "Show me Zara," he whispered. "Find her." The dog pulled with unusual urgency, weaving through the streets, darting between Okadas and Danfoss. They crossed the lagoon bridge into Lagos Island, where shadows deepened around warehouses, long abandoned by trade, but repurposed by men who thrived in secrecy. Corrugated iron walls loomed, graffiti smeared across them, broken windows glowing faintly from within. Zara stopped, barking fiercely at one of the largest warehouses. Obinna's chest throbbed with dread. He slipped inside through a rusted side door, every creak echoing like a gunshot in the cavernous dark. The air smelled of dust and oil, heavy with the memory of cargo once moved here. Then he saw her. Amara. She was bound to a chair in the center of the room, her wrists tied, her eyes wide but alive. Relief crashed over him like a wave. "Amara!" he cried, rushing to her side. Zara barked frantically, tail wagging as she nuzzled Amara's hand. Obinna fumbled with the ropes, his hands trembling. "I thought I lost you," he whispered, his voice breaking. Tears welled in Amara's eyes, but she forced a brave smile. "I'm still here." When the knots finally gave way, he pulled her into his arms, holding her, as though he could shield her from every shadow that threatened her. In that embrace, Obinna broke. Tears streaked his cheeks, his body shaking with the weight of fear and love. "I will never abandon you, Amara, never." But as his gaze lifted, he froze. Across the warehouse wall, painted in crude red strokes, were the words, "Last warning." There were no kidnappers to fight, no guards to chase. Whoever had taken Amara had vanished like mist, leaving only this message. It wasn't violence they wanted to inflict, not yet. It was fear. Agu was playing with them, reminding them of his reach, of how easily he could pluck them from safety and return them unharmed, just to prove he controlled their very breath. Amara shivered against him. "He doesn't want to kill us, not yet. He wants us to live in silence, to drown in fear." Obinna clenched his fists, fury overtaking dread. "Then we speak louder. If silence is what he demands, truth is what we will give." They returned to her apartment, exhausted but resolute. The moment the door closed behind them, Amara opened her laptop, her fingers trembling but determined. Together they began recording a video. The camera captured their weary faces lit by a single bulb. Amara spoke first, her voice steady despite the shadows in her eyes. She recounted the files, offshore accounts, oil spills, Chinello's recordings. She spoke of Agu's empire, not in whispers, but in declarations meant for the world to hear. Then Obinna leaned forward, his voice raw with emotion. "My name is Obinna Nwachukwu. I am not rich. I am not powerful. But I have seen the truth. And I will not stay silent, even if it costs me my life. This is not only about me. This is about every child who drinks poisoned water, every family ruined by greed, every voice silenced like Chinello's. The world must know." Zara patted into the frame, her scarred body standing as wordless testimony. Amara's hand rested on her head as if to say, "Here is the witness you could not silence." When the video ended, the room was still, heavy with the weight of what they had just done. It was more than a recording. It was a declaration of war against a man who believed himself untouchable. Amara's fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Once this goes out, there's no turning back." Obinna nodded, his jaw set. "Then let the world hear us." She clicked the upload button. The progress bar crawled forward inch by inch. The hum of the generator filled the silence, each percentage point tightening the coil of suspense in the air. 70%, 80, 95. Then suddenly, the screen froze. The bar stopped. The connection icon blinked red. Their internet had been cut. Amara gasped, trying to reconnect. No, not now." Obinna's stomach dropped, his breath shallow. Outside the window, the street was unusually silent, as if the city itself had paused. Zara growled, ears pricked at the door. The upload screen remained frozen, the words "connection lost" burning against the dark. Their truth had been trapped mid-flight, suspended in silence, while shadows moved closer outside their door. They ran with the city at their heels. From Yaba's humming alleys to the restless edges of Surulere, Obinna and Amara moved like sparks carried by wind, chasing a signal before the night devoured it. Zara kept pace, every muscle taut, every glance backward a question. Are we still unseen? The upload had died in their hands. the truth trapped mid-air. Now speed was survival, and survival was signal. They tried a cafe whose generator coughed smoke like an old dragon. The network stuttered, then fell flat. They tried a co-working loft above a fabric store. The router blinked as if winking at them, then went blind. They climbed a dim stairwell to a rooftop canteen where the owner swore by his unlimited connection. A minute later, the screen froze again, mocking their urgency. Each failure tightened the coil in Obinna's chest, but Amara's focus never wavered. She rerouted, reapplied encryption, spun their data through onion layers until even the air seemed confused about their location. Finally, at a modest community center tucked near the lagoon, where children learned coding by day and aunties practiced choir at dusk, they found a quiet corner beneath a peeling mural of a sunrise. The room smelled of chalk, plastic chairs, and hope. Amara powered on the laptop, her fingers a measured storm. Obinna watched the progress bar inch forward, a slow heartbeat made visible. Zara lay at his feet and exhaled, as if granting them her small blessing. 70%? 84. 99. Obinna held his breath until it hurt, and still he held it. Then the bar turned green. A soft chime landed in the room, and the file, every document, every photograph, every voice note, shot out across servers they would never see, into inboxes they would never open. International desks received the drop like a sudden thunderclap. Amara's eyes closed, a prayer without words. Obinna felt the ground tilt, not in fear now, but in release. By dawn, Lagos vibrated with rumor becoming proof. Screens lit up Matatu-style buses and boardrooms alike. Morning traders gathered in clusters, whispering as headlines unraveled the empire. Offshore chains looping through islands with postcard water. Secret shipments masked as palm kernels. Silent payouts that silenced communities. Old suspicions sharpened into names and amounts. Talk shows abandoned scripted banter for stunned analysis. Influencers shed irony and posted the files raw, while aunties forwarded voice notes that trembled with fury and relief. We were not mad. We were not blind. Across the lagoon, the glass mansion lost its glow. Delivery trucks turned around at the gate. Drivers idled outside, uncertain. A private jet stayed grounded as maintenance staff declined new tasks without explanation. Partners who had smiled for photographs withdrew to neutral statements. Routine review? Pressing commitments elsewhere. Investors, sensing the direction of the wind, pulled stakes with tidy, devastating emails that contained no apologies, only distance. A network built on whispers met a louder chorus, and the chorus would not hush. Obinna and Amara did not bask. They ate in small bites, slept in smaller hours, and answered messages from journalists who requested verification and context. They offered the story plainly. A woman named Chinelo, gathering courage bead by bead, a dog named Zara, escaping the night that tried to swallow memory, a stranger who bent to mercy beneath a bridge and found a fuse wired to an empire. They refused to stand as symbols, insisting instead on being witnesses. Zara changed first. Her gait loosened, the stiffness that sorrow breeds softened at the edges. The angry welt on her foreleg faded to a pale thread of history. When Amara laughed, Zara's ears perked before her tail did, as if learning the sound anew. Obinna noticed that she no longer startled at slammed doors, and some quiet inside him unclenched. In that small healing, he saw a promise. Wounds do not vanish, yet they can be carried without chains. The city's voice swelled and braided into something like renewal. At Balogun, a woman who once mocked Obinna pressed boiled groundnuts into his palm and said, "For strength, my son." A generator repairman refused to take his money. Kunle sent a message, just 3 words, "Proud of you." Under the bridge where the story had begun, 2 boys poured water for a limping stray and whispered, "Guy, be gentle." It was not revolution, it was a tilt. Sometimes a tilt is enough to change a horizon. As the sun lifted from the lagoon, the third mainland bridge wore a crown of light. Danfoss crawled like yellow beetles beneath a sky rinsed clean. Amara and Obinna stood at the railing, wind pressing their clothes into their skin, salt lifting from the water in bright flecks. He thought of the brochure he'd once hidden in a drawer, the one that said, "Veterinary Science" in hopeful fonts. He thought of nights with no bread and mornings with no map. He reached for Amara's hand, and she gave it without looking, the way people do when trust has settled its luggage and refuses to leave. "I have no riches," he murmured, "and yet I am not poor." Amara smiled, eyes on the rooster-tail wake of a passing boat. "We have what money cannot launder." "Love," he said, "and justice," she finished. Behind them, passers-by traded stories the way markets trade fabric. The version that stuck was simple. A stranger saved a dog, and the empire that feared a woman's voice learned to fear a whisper. In the telling, Obinna's name grew longer only by gratitude. In the living, he kept it small. They turned toward home, walking the lane that smelled of smoke and ripe oranges. Obinna felt light enough to float, anchored only by the hands he held, one warm, human, certain, one furred, loyal, whole. The city's noise gathered like music, pots clanged, radios bragged, somewhere someone tuned a guitar. Then the street bent, and a car waited at the corner where the pavement cracked, new, lacquered, silent. Its windows were a single mirror that took the morning and gave nothing back. The engine did not purr. It listened. Zara stopped first. The luxury car did not move as Obinna met its reflection, but its quiet attention wrapped the lane like a glove, hinting that in the wake of one fallen empire, another shadow had opened its eyes. If this story moved you, don't just leave quietly. Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every one of them. Hit the like button if you want more powerful dramas like this, and subscribe so you never miss the next twist. Your support keeps these stories alive. Let's grow this journey together.